Before we start, let me just say, I really like Grimgar. I think it's one of the better anime to come out in 2016. I think it has several strong elements, like the growth of its characters and the way death is handled throughout the show. The show lets characters breathe throughout its runtime and gives them room to deal with the emotional issues that pop up in the show. The battles are a refreshing and engaging change of pace, even if they have their own issues. Their realism leads to some gripping scenes that have you wondering about the well-being of the characters. The animation helps to add to these fights and draw the viewer in. The show builds up the characters very nicely as they've earned their growth throughout the series. This isn't like Kirito where he becomes mega powerful at the beginning. They start from the bottom and have to crawl their way into being halfway decent by the end of the series. Not ultra powerful, halfway decent. I do appreciate that. I also like the watercolor background and enjoy the character designs in the show. The watercolor helps to differ the show from its contemporaries and gives a fresh artistic style for the viewer to bite into. The character designs do their jobs even if Haru kind of resembles Kirito a bit. The voice acting is well done and helps to give the characters more depth. And lastly, the second opening is one of my favorite from last year and does a good job introducing the major characters and displaying them in character appropriate stances. Here, I'll even let you listen to a couple seconds. It really starts to grow on you after a while, which makes it even more of a shame that this anime is a good show, but it could have been a great show. There are several factors that hold this anime back from reaching its true potential, whether it comes to tone problems, continuity errors in animations, confusing directions some of the fight scenes, or a lack of context to truly bring the world to life. Grimgar has enough problems that harm it in the long run. From this point on in the video, I will now bring up a few spoilers from the anime, and for anyone who just wants a recommendation, this is a good show that has some problems, but I feel it is worth your time to watch it and check it out and judge for yourself. As for anybody else, let's continue. I will now play you a clip from the fight that results in Minato's death, and will ask you a question once it is finished. Now, for my question. Were you able to follow that? Did you understand where everyone was located and how the fight was progressing? Did you know who was fighting who and where they were fighting? How certain characters got to where they were? If you did, I kind of need an explanation because I still have a hard time doing so. I was confused on my first viewing, but after a few clips, I will admit I do have more of a grasp on what happens in there. And you can kind of tell where everything is. And I get that they might be trying to emulate the confusion of battle here. But honestly, I think that scene just had either poor editing and poor direction because it's still hard to tell what exactly is going on, where everything's happening, and it's really hard to tell that there was a cave-in until you see everything fall down, and it's not really clear when it happens. And this isn't just a problem for this fight, it happens in other fights, such as when Haru fights one of the goblins that was responsible for killing Minato. They start tussling around, and if they fall, and Yumi apparently either distracts the goblin or tosses the knife that had fallen to Haru as she shouts his name and he thanks her afterward. But this isn't really shown in the scene itself, as Haru just somehow grabs his last knife without us ever really knowing where it came from. I know the knife falls down there, but it doesn't seem to fall the entire way, and if it did, it doesn't show up next to Haru as he and the goblin fall to the edge. So it's either poor editing and direction there to kind of show that Yumi threw it, or bad continuity in showing that the knife is right next to Haru, because it doesn't show us that. Little craps like these add up throughout the anime as they occur with a little too much frequency. Characters will be standing where they weren't in another shot, and a character will randomly disappear when another point of view is used. Hell, Ranta loses his helmet in the mines and somehow gets it back in a momentary shot later. Speaking of Ranta, his perversion is one of the elements of the show that really didn't hit home for me, as I really don't think they carried out the scenes with that very well, and it seemed a little too creepy. I know it might have been played for humor, and I know that's part of Ranta's character, he's a pervert, but he's also supposed to be kind of likable, and he can be a bit much sometimes when it comes to that. He's a bit too, I wouldn't say rapey, but he's getting there. And the moments they decide to use this perversion aren't the right type of contrast with the current scene. He continuously imagines groping Yumi's breast after escaping death, but doesn't really mesh well with the current situation he's in. And I'm not saying that different tones can't be used together, I just don't think it really worked in this show. The world of Grimgar also has its own problems. That's not to say I didn't enjoy the world, it's just I felt while it had some good world building, and I really enjoyed what they did with the goblins, as I felt it was how they were portrayed was one of the series' strong points. I really don't think the show's world was as fleshed out as it could have been. I know the show was really only made to sell the light novel, but that doesn't mean we couldn't have seen how these characters got together and trained for their different roles. The show apparently skips out on a lot of material from the light novel, and it does kind of show some events feel rushed and it hurts the overall flow of the show. With Monato's death, a little bit more time could have been added to make his death more emotional to audience members. I get that the viewers are supposed to feel the loss, not because they knew the character well, but because they wanted to and didn't get the chance, mirroring the character's own sentiments towards Monato. However, I don't think this quite works, as the characters know much better than we do. We only got to really know him through a few sincere character moments that, while making him likable, didn't give us the same emotional attachment that the characters would have been as they got to know him for a few weeks. It could have been given a little bit more development to flesh him out just enough so that the audience could parallel the characters and their reactions. The NPCs of the world could have also gotten more screen time or explanation, as they are just kind of thrown at us inconsequentially and only really take up space. The show does bring up how little the characters know about the world, but doesn't really dive into that after mentioning it. The lack of real explanation is only enhanced by the ending. I think it works for the show, as it leaves the characters at a good stopping point that can be picked up if the show gets a second season, but it does leave the viewer with a feeling of incompleteness. There's more to this world, but we're not able to experience that. And with how little is shown to us, that hurts the overall satisfaction that Grimgar can bring. In closing, Grimgar is a series that pleases me with the direction its story and characters take, but frustrates me with various nagging issues that plague it throughout its runtime. Its pros far outweigh its cons, but its cons hold the show back from what it is truly capable of, and leave the audience with a solid show that could have been much more.